Well, if you've made it this far, then that means you know that today we are working on the Yugo. Joe, you've been asking about the Yugo Toyota project. If you don't know what that is, I'm going to leave a link to a video right up here where I told you I was going to take a engine and transmission out of a 2005 Toyota Echo and we're going to install it into my 1987 Yugo. That's still the plan. But something's changed, and what has changed is, well, the price of gas. You all know that I've got my 79 Chrysler Cordoba, I've got my 77 Chevy C10, Dale the truck, and with the price of gas nearing almost $2 a liter, or for those of you who tend to heckle me in the comments, $8 a gallon is what we're paying here in Canada currently, almost. So I figured if I'm going to drive something and have some fun, we're going to drive the Yugo for a little while, get a few bugs worked out of it. We're going to be ripping apart all the smog BS out of this car because we want to free up a few more horsepowers. The 57 that it came stock with just ain't enough. And right now it runs good going down the highway, but it idles like crap. So we're going to start with that. We've already done the tune-up, and eventually once we get all that to the point where it's running good, we're going to put the timing belt in it, which is something I promised a long time ago, but guess what, I haven't been driving the car. So looks like we're going to be doing some work on old Yugo here today so that we can drive it. Those of you who know or who have been a part of the channel for a long time know that I camp during the summertime, and our camp is about 18 kilometers, 10, 11 miles away from home. So it's not a huge commute, but I'm hoping that this thing here on the 6-gallon tank or 7-gallon tank, whatever it is, will last me maybe a couple of weeks back and forth to the campground every day. So anyways, let's get underneath the hood and show you what we're going to do today. The biggest thing that we got to do to free up a little bit of power and efficiency and hopefully make this thing run a little bit better is all the vacuum lines that are involved in this little car. From where you're standing, you probably can't see much, but this little manifold here has vacuum lines that come out. There's a bunch of them that go underneath the breather. There's 2 that plug into the breather right here. There's 2 more that plug in underneath the breather, and the carburetor has a whole bunch of these lines coming off them that I don't think are necessary. We got one right here for this heat riser valve thingy, whatever it is. Let's just get this air breather off and we'll get you in for a closer look. So these are the 2 lines that go to the side of the breather over there. This one is unplugged underneath of it, as well as this one. We've got some regular vacuum lines going into the side, which I believe is just ported vacuum. We've got another one coming over here. A lot of the stuff goes into this little manifold thingy. And here, I believe, is the actual air pump. We've got, this is just a choke line. But we've also got the brake booster, which is down in there, which we've got this little thing here. So as far as I'm concerned, there's only a couple of things that we actually need vacuum lines for. So obviously one is for the brake booster to help aid in power brakes. And that's about it. There's a couple of other little things that we're going to be figuring out here on where they go. But my goal is to eliminate like 99% of what's in here. As you can see, we've got about a 3-inch deck screw that somebody has plugged something off at one point in time as well. Again, we don't know where it goes. We don't know what it's controlling, but it's going right down into the bottom of the carburetor. My guess is it's a manifold vacuum for something. Not quite sure what it is. So the goal, like I said, let's get everything unplugged, removed, and then start figuring out what we actually need. I've got a whole container full of vacuum plugs, and we can start plugging off all these ports on the carburetor and see if it will run with no vacuum lines running anywhere else and see if it runs better. If it does, then we'll find out what the necessary vacuum lines are, like the brake booster, and eliminate everything else. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'll be right back. Okay, so we managed to get approximately 8, maybe 9 vacuum ports plugged off. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to get this thing started up to temperature, and then we're going to take it for a drive up the road and come to a complete stop and see if it's going to die off or stall out on me, because that's what it was doing. It's still spitting and sputtering a little bit. Keep in mind this thing has 57,000 original miles on it and sat for 15 years with a full tank of gas. Even though we rebuilt the carburetor and the fuel system, it still spits and sputters, so it could be a little bit of carbon buildup on the valves. And, well, we haven't driven this thing much. I think since I've owned it for almost a year, I may have put about 15 miles on it, and that was just a couple of weeks ago. So that's what prompted me to figure out what's going on with all these vacuum lines. So let's get the air breather on, everything hooked back up, and the hood closed. Take off down the road and see how she works. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pull up here to the side of the road and pull over and let it come to an idle and see if it stalls or not. Because that's where I was finding I was having the trouble. And it didn't stumble, not even a single little bit, but I do think I got the idle turned up too high. So let's go fix that. We'll try it again. So right now we're at a point where I can't get the idle down even with the adjustment screw, and that tells me I've got a vacuum leak. So let's go back to my shop and see if we can't figure out where it is. Okay, so we've got it idling pretty good right now, and as you can see, we've got all the vacuum lines off and everything is plugged up. There's all the vacuum lines that we took off this thing. So what we're going to do now is that we've got it idling pretty decent, is we're going to take it for a little spin up the road and see if it's still going to bog out when we come to a stop. So let's try one more time. So it's not perfect. It still has a little bit of a high idle. We're going to try and fix that. It just seems as though there's too much adjustment one way and too much the other with just a small turn of the idle screw. So it works great going down the highway. That's the big thing. I just don't want it stalling. I'd rather have a little bit of a high idle than a low idle. So I think we've got it set pretty close at this point. I pulled it in the garage, made a few more adjustments, and now I can shut it off. And it starts right up, right where it's supposed to be, and it stays running on its own without hitting the gas. So I think we're close, or at least we're closer than we were when we started. All right, so it's a different day, and I managed to get the carb or the choke set up because it's now cold from when it was running for you guys just a few minutes ago. And it seems like once the choke is set, it closes right up. And if I just kind of loosen that up to 2 notches, you'll see that it's closed up and it starts right up with no problem. So I want to keep the engine cool because I'm going to be working on it. And what we want to do now is we want to get this smog pump disconnected. So there's 2 13mm bolts back there. That looks like there's probably I don't know, maybe a 15mm holding that into a bracket. And then we should be able to loosen that up, get the belt off, and then pull the pump out of the way, disconnect anything that needs to be disconnected off of it. Might have to get this air box out of here too, but we'll deal with that when we come to it. So let's get that air pump off. All right, so we've got the smog pump or the air pump out of this area. We do still have a belt on there because it's in behind the other belt, which runs the water pump, looks like the air conditioning, and goes to the crank. So what we've got to be able to do is now find a belt that's long enough just to go from the water pump pulley right there to the alternator so that everything is still turning and we have a charger for the battery. So we've got to get this belt figured out what that looks like as far as the size goes and the length. And then we can kind of button that up and then we'll start it up again and see if everything is working the way it should be. While I was here, I decided, well, let's take a look at seeing what's involved in getting that timing cover off, because at some point we will have to change that belt. We don't know when the last time it was done. And right from Yugo, they recommended these, I believe, somewhere around every, I don't know, like 40,000 kilometers or something like that. Anyways, whatever it is, it's probably past due. The thing has been sitting for a long period of time, and we're gonna see if we can get this thing tuned up so we can drive it on a daily basis. So because we have the air pump off, that means we also don't have this hose connected to anything, which was, I would assume, pumping air into whatever this is here, EGR, I'm thinking. So we're kind of bypassing the EGR maybe at this point, I don't know. But nevertheless, it's gone. We've got a couple of things we've got to reconnect here. The choke has to connect there, and then this has to connect here. So there is the old smog pump. This bracket came off with it. We do have to install that back on the car though, and I'll show you why. Because two of the bolts that hold it on are valve cover bolts right here. So we're gonna get that bracket on for proper spacing and then get the thing bolted back down. And then I think we're going to see what we can do about that belt, get it started one more time, see if it runs a little bit better again. And then maybe we'll tackle the timing belt, who knows. So we've got our belt cut to fit, and we're gonna take this down to the auto parts store, Napa or CarQuest or whoever's got the belt that we need, and see if we can find a couple that are pretty close to what I've measured here. So we'll go do that, and we'll see if we can get this thing back on. I did find there was a bolt that had a small adjustment on the alternator, which is kind of right down in here, but it doesn't give you a whole lot of adjustment, as you can see. So we've got to be pretty precise on this belt measurement. At the end of the day, we'll find something, we'll grab 2 or 3 maybe, and see if we can make it work. So let's go get a belt. So when the belt you need is about 19.5 inches, and all you can find is a 19 and a 20, you grab them both. And we're gonna see if we can make enough adjustment on that bracket. If we have to hole it out, ream it out a little bit to make it work, we'll do it. But in the meantime, we're gonna try and get one of these 2 belts to fit on there and get this thing so that it'll run and still charge the battery while we're driving, and see how good it's gonna run without that smog pump on there. Let's get to it. So there we have one smog pump. We've got an alternator, and we got a great big hole down here in the back of the motor. So right now, the problem that we seem to be having is that I can't get the AC compressor out. I got it off all the brackets. I think that was my downfall. I should have left it on the brackets before I decided that I was going to try and take it out, because now I can't get at those 2 nuts right there for the high and low side of the AC compressor. When I go to try and pull on them, it just wants to turn the whole alternator, or the whole AC compressor. Anyways, that's what we're trying to do, is get the compressor out and figure out how we're gonna remount the bracket for the alternator. This bracket right here is just kind of all loosey-goosey right now. And the alternator, according to the book, the alternator in its stock configuration without AC sits below the water pump. So it's basically gonna go where the AC compressor is now, and that bracket looks like it might be a little bit different than what's in there. Anyway, we've got a mess going on here, and I've been just scratching my head. I got a little bit frustrated. My bladder was telling me it was time to use the bathroom. My stomach was telling me it was time to eat, and I had to wet my whistle as well. So got all that stuff out of the way, cleared my head a little bit. Now we're back here trying to get this thing going. And some of you guys may be questioning, well, why are you even bothering going through all this if you're just going to motor swap it anyways? Well, like I said before, I do want to drive this for a little while this summer to save on a few bucks in gas, just like everybody else. So that's the plan. We just want to kind of get this stuff out of the way so that we can kind of start daily driving it. Camping season opens up very, very soon on a long weekend in May. Actually, a week before that here in Canada, so the 14th of May is 13th is a Friday, I guess. We're going to open the campground, get down there, and start having some camping season, which usually requires a lot of beer and a lot of barbecue. So it's a little ways away. We're going to use this car. So at this point, I'm just going to trudge away. If I make any progress, I'll be sure to pick up the camera and let you guys in on what's going on. So when you've exhausted all reasonable efforts, it's time for the big guns. we're going to reach down in there and we are going to cut those two lines off, those two AC lines. I wanted to try and save as much of this AC system as I could because it has value to somebody who's got one of these cars that wants to put AC in it. The condenser, the fan, all that stuff is here. The evaporator and all that stuff is available in the aftermarket, but it's expensive. And I figure if I can save as much as I can, like these lines and stuff, then somebody else can just kind of, on a weekend project, install it in their car without having to have any custom work done. But I can't seem to get that off. I can't get the bracket back into place because I've taken the brackets off. And in order to do what I want to do, I've got to put it back together, essentially. I spent 3 hours this morning trying to get this thing apart. Not going to do it. So sacrifices needed to be made. Let's do it. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh, there we go. Now, figure out the rest of it. So there's the air pump is out, the alternator's out, the AC compressor is out, and we got to get this one back in. That one's kind of important. All right, so what we're up against right now is this last remaining bracket that the bolt itself seems to be seized inside the tube, and my little impact right there just won't do it. So I had to go over to the shop and get out the big guns. So we're gonna try and use this to get that thing off there. Let's see if it works. Third gear. Well, that's one way to get out, is to break it. Now we're in a whole world of hurt. Dang it. Well, now I think we're in trouble. Now we gotta figure around with that. I could see if we could try and get that bracket off, I guess. We can work on it on the bench, so I think that's the next step. So here's that bracket that was holding the AC and the alternator. It doesn't look like it's a factory unit by no means. This car had aftermarket or dealer installed air conditioning, so the Yugo dealer would have installed it. And these are some of the brackets that they would have made. There's this one here, and there's also that one there. So something tells me, I mean, the welds look good, but it's definitely not a factory engineered piece by any means. So I don't even know if we have to reuse this or if we can figure out some way to get that alternator mounted without it. But in the meantime, I'm gonna see if I can get that bolt out. It seems like it's seized in there really good. Well guys, I think we just got boned. This right here is one of the water pump bolts that we would hope that it would hold the bracket for the alternator. Yeah, she broke. So that means in order to fix it properly, the water pump's got to come off to extract the other end of the bolt that's into the water pump housing. And we just created a lot bigger job for ourselves than we really wanted to. Let me show you where this goes. So this bolt goes right in there. It started to come out, and as you can see, it's out, you know, like a little bit, and then it just quit coming out. That's the bottom part, I believe, where that curved bracket mounts to this bolt and the one below it, which I've had out. It came out all right. But there's still a portion of this bolt stuck in this housing. I don't have another water pump or the proper gasket. I suppose we could make a gasket. And this motor is coming out eventually anyway, so I could just do a temporary fix, but this is where we are right now. And by the look of the time, she's 5 o'clock, and you know what that means. I think we're done for today. I think that's where we're going to end this video, and we'll pick right back up with the water pump repair and see if we can't get this thing running in time for the long weekend. which is only a week away. Anywho, that's where we stand, guys. If you like this content and you want to see more on the Yugo, maybe you want to see something on the Chrysler Cordoba, or even Dale the truck, or the Monaco. We've got lots to work on. We're kind of committed to this project right now. But anyways, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. We've got lots more Yugo content and everything else coming on this channel. If you don't know anything about the Yugo, go right back to the very beginning from the time I bought it. Almost a year ago, I went to Prince Edward Island, Canada, and I hauled it across the bridge and lugged it home. That was an episode, let me tell you what. Go back and watch that. We did get it running, and obviously you've seen me driving it. But nevertheless, make sure you tune in and subscribe to this channel. Also, if you want more great automotive car content, and well, you don't watch much YouTube, well, check out the Get Out and Drive podcast. Myself and John, Custom Car Nerd Meyer, co-host the Get Out and Drive podcast. We're dropping regular episodes. Great conversation, and I'm learning a lot. So make sure you tune into that wherever you find your favorite podcast. Guys, stay focused on the windshield, not the rearview mirror. I love you. God bless. Let's do it again real soon.